The immigration battle has reached fever pitch as President Trump and his administration are blaming the southern border crisis on Democrats and Congress for stalling on legislation they say could bring a resolution.
Immigration is the fault and all of the problems that we're having, because we cannot get them to sign legislation. We cannot get them even to the negotiating table. And I say it's very strongly the Democrats' fault.
Oh boy, the administration is holding immigrants who illegally cross the border for prosecution and separating parents from children. Critics are calling the policy cruel and inhumane. But this afternoon, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen said claims that the administration intends to separate parents and kids are offensive and that officials are simply doing their job enforcing the law. Like the president, Nielsen laid the responsibility on Congress, saying they're the only ones with the ability to fix the crisis. Watch.
Congress and the courts created this problem, and Congress alone can fix it. Until then, we will enforce every law we have on the books to defend the sovereignty and security of the United States.
All right, so who is to blame for this mess? Let me bring in senior editor at the Federalist and Fox News contributor Mollie Hemingway. Welcome back, Mollie.
Great to be here with you.
So let's talk a little bit about the people who are coming over, because after the president was elected, we saw a sharp drop in apprehensions at the border. That was based on the perception that the president was going to make some changes in immigration policy and enforcement. And now we're seeing the separation of parents from children in some of these cases because of what members of the administration are calling a zero-tolerance policy. What has the shift been?
Right. So in previous administrations, and particularly under the Obama administration, when someone illegally entered the country and only after being caught claimed that they were seeking asylum, they would essentially be let go. So they would be told, come, we're going to let you go right now, but come back for a court date. And it became this thing that was an incentive structure for people to cross the border illegally with children. Mm-hmm. They knew that if they got caught, there was this loophole that enabled them to basically head off to wherever their actual destination was. They never showed up for court, and they could just live here as planned. So what happened is we started to see a real sharp rise in the number of people making this type of border crossing. A reminder that if you are truly seeking asylum, you can go to any port of entry in the United States, declare yourself as an asylum seeker. You will not be separated from your family. So this is only for people who claim that they're seeking asylum after they were caught illegally crossing the border. But really that uptick was very high. In the first 3 months alone, they had almost as many people who were using this method and not showing up for court dates as they had all of the previous year. And so there was a decision in the Trump administration that this policy really had to change because it was creating a bad incentive structure.
Well, it is a bad incentive structure, and you say that there are a lot of people who are crossing the border who are just gaming the system. But I think we can all agree that, and I do agree with you that the Obama administration, they were not innocent sweethearts when it came to immigration and especially deportation. But, reinforcing bad Obama laws is no justification. If what happened in the Obama era was bad, why would this administration be doing the same thing under the auspices that the law is the law and therefore it's going to be enforced in this particular way?
Right. I mean, really what you had before was a failure to enforce the law. The big change is that this administration is enforcing the law. If you don't think that borders matter, you don't think they matter as much as some people think, go ahead and pass a law that says they don't matter. As it is right now, there's really not much option other than not enforcing the law. And that is something that I think a lot of American people have decided is no longer tenable when it comes to immigration. Now, having said that, Senator Ted Cruz just proposed legislation that I think might be something that keeps a lot of people happy on both sides, takes the issue of sovereignty seriously, but also addresses how long it takes to adjudicate these illegal border crossings followed by refugee or asylum-seeking status. And basically he says you have 2 weeks to resolve it. If they don't meet the standards, they're deported as a family. Otherwise, they can be allowed to stay here as a family.
Yes, deported as a family back to the United States. Now, the issue that people have isn't with the United States having borders or enforcing our own laws. The issue is the optics of how bad this looks. And, you have a lot of Republicans and a lot of never-Trumpers who are seizing on this issue, who have been opposing the president fruitlessly, but now they have found something that actually has traction. And it doesn't seem that this is the best way and this is the best negotiating tool. And it doesn't even matter if they're showing pictures from 2014. People aren't going to listen to the clarification. The only thing that's getting through is that there are warehouses full of children who are separated from their parents, and there hasn't been a cohesive explanation from the administration what is happening and why it's happening.
Yeah, that's absolutely true that this has not been well communicated, and there is a moral cost to separating children from their families, and it needs to be addressed. The laws absolutely need to be addressed. It's also true that people frequently feel like there is a lack of honesty in the immigration debate. Ultimately, this is a problem of border enforcement and how porous our border is. Rather than talk about that, we bring up the latest group of people that are sure to evoke a lot of sympathy and talk about that instead of the overarching problem, which is, are we a nation of laws? Do we have national sovereignty? Do we have a border that means anything? And people are getting very tired of weaponizing different groups of immigrants as a way to prevent us from talking about it.
And I agree with there's a lot of emotionalizing on both sides. I also agree that members of Congress lack courage to come up with a comprehensive immigration policy and what that means. Because on one side, you want to make businesses happy and provide them with inexpensive labor options. But on the other hand, you want to make sure that people aren't coming into this country to take advantage of benefits. But no one really wants to pass laws that might be politically perilous for them and make re-election difficult. So instead, we are in immigration limbo, and extremists on both sides get to dig their heels in. Well, sadly, kids seem to be the ones stuck in the middle. Last word, Mollie.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of immigration. I actually think we should have more of it. At the same time, we need laws, and we need to agree on those laws. Whether you're a restrictionist or not, everyone should know that the rule of law is the way that we can work together as a society and truly be a nation with borders and laws.
Mollie Hemingway, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.